So, the FBI recently arrested a growing TikTok star after his shoes, which had been seen in a couple of his TikTok videos, were connected to a string of armed robberies. Now, there's a very interesting pun that's in this entire title, but beyond that, what kind of a dumbass do you have to be for you to start dancing in TikTok videos with the same exact things that you wore when you were robbing a 7-Eleven? Like, there's common sense, there's uncommon sense, and there's lack of any sense thereof. And I'm going to make a very unintelligent guess and assume that he is not one of the other two senses.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
The FBI arrested an aspiring social media influencer after it connected him to a series of robberies by identifying his sneakers in TikTok videos. The Michigan resident known as Chosen Terrell Hannah, who is 22 years old, could be seen dancing while wearing Nike sneakers with red spots on them that matched the shoes worn by an armed robber who'd held up 4 stores from December to February. An anonymous tipster pointed agents to the Chosen World page on TikTok, which has more than 149,000 followers and 1.6 million likes. Terrell Hannah allegedly robbed a 7-Eleven twice and also robbed a gas station and a smoke shop, the station said. The robber of each of the cases was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, a mask, and white shoes. But during the last robbery, witnesses noticed pink hair visible under the mask. Detroit News said authorities told the outlet that they watched dozens of his social media videos and noticed he matched up with witnesses' descriptions. In one video, he is dancing and singing a song with partially dyed pink hair visible. The FBI also said once it tracked Terrell Hannah after obtaining a warrant, cell phone data showed him in the area of the robberies. During a raid of his residence, agents found a Glock handgun and unique shoes. After his arrest on Wednesday, he allegedly admitted to the robbery. And I'm going to stop reading over there. Because, honestly, like, this is a guy who's robbed 7-Eleven twice. I'm assuming he's at least robbed a cash register, even when you include the gas station. Because I don't think he's robbing fuel or from a petrol station. Like, if anything, shouldn't this guy have used at least a little bit of that money to go and buy himself another pair of shoes? Like, I can get that you love a certain pair, but either you keep that pair and use it on TikTok videos, or you buy a pair and you keep those shoes for the armed robberies. Why does such a person choose to do both? Like, has none of you watched Power? Has none of you tried to look at how it is that people try to disassociate themselves from the crime as much as possible? They'll use different clothes, they'll wear different things. Hell, they'll even do shit that is totally different. Sometimes people might even change their walking style just so that they can make sure they don't get caught. And this nigga had the nerve to wear the same shoes that he was robbing people with on TikTok videos. Like, I feel like there's a certain sense of stupidity that's there. And I hope that on his list of dances, he will have some stripper type dances when he's in prison, because he's very clearly going to have to be the kind of guy that makes sure he does not drop the soap for his stupidity. Like, nigga should have just changed the shoes. Simple as that. But anyways, that said, we need to start the podcast. This isn't even what we're supposed to be discussing on the podcast, because we deal with love, sex, and relationships, and we should have started this shit, because it's been such a long time since I started with the legendary beginning. You know, the part where I usually start by saying, welcome to Breaktime on Westside, your number one breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who just so happens to have enough sense to set up a TikTok account, but also happens to have enough sense to change his shoes. At Denver_Bagaka is the handle you should hit up and follow. He's a man whose new favorite form of cardio is skipping leg day. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show, where I get to talk about love, sex, and relationships. You know, somebody gets to catch a feeling at some point. Maybe I say something controversial, but usually I'll have a conclusion at the end. And the good thing about it is, it's never always just the end. If you feel like it's something that we should look into again, if you feel like there's something that I didn't say, if you feel like you have a view that is a little bit different from what it is that I said, we can always take it beyond the episode into the social media. At Breaktime on Westside on IG is the place to follow. At Breaktime on Westside on Facebook is the Facebook page to follow. And on Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at BagakaTheD, and I will take your replies. I will be ready to engage with you. And we can always make that magic happen. And hell, I might even bring that magic onto the mic, onto the podcast. Now, it's been a very good period of rest for me. Like, I have to start by saying that. Raw Zone was out. I barely was doing much else besides, just getting some rest, getting some R&R, because I had felt as though I was actually sort of getting drained by the podcast. And I didn't want the quality of the content to go down simply because my levels of fatigue were going up. So I figured, let me just give it a little bit of time. But I'm back, bigger and better. And I have to admit, these past 2 weeks have been a very, very interesting set of 2 weeks. I literally get off the mic for 2 straight weeks and it's like everything goes to shit. Russia is invading Ukraine, Pete Davidson is deleting his Instagram account, and Kanye West is busy holding up a head in a video that is modeled to look like Pete Davidson's head. People are losing it. And honestly, it would have been such a great time to get on the mic and make jokes about all of that shit, but I'm glad that I managed to get the rest either way. Although I do have to admit, this whole Kanye and Pete thing is really, really becoming something. For somebody who was all about the Christian life and shit, I'm surprised Kanye is going to the creative extent of making a model of Pete Davidson's head that he's using on a video. I feel like that shows a little bit more about how spiteful he might be about the entire thing, rather than the fact that, he is trying to pass a message. This was supposed to be the Christian out of all of this. And yet it's Pete Davidson who's being all chill about it. And, he had gotten so much hate from Yeezy fans that he ended up having to close his IG account. I feel sorry for the guy to a certain extent because, the guy hasn't really attacked him. He's just been getting attacked one time after another. And I genuinely do feel sorry for him. Because in as much as Kim's ass probably is soft, his life is a hell of a lot harder right now. But probably not about as hard as the Masai Mara University student who died after overdosing on erectile dysfunction pills, aka blue pills. Now, the way the story kind of came out, because this was something that happened about 2-3 weeks ago. Now, a student of Masai Mara University ended up dying because of an overdose of blue pills. Now, according to the report that was released by the police, the deceased with other 5 fellow students had a party on the 18th of February at around 1900 hours, and immediately after having a meal, the deceased started complaining of constant erection of his manhood, which he experienced until 21st of February when he decided to go for treatment at the university clinic where he was treated and discharged. Now, I'm gonna sound like a bit of a parent for this entire bit, just, regarding this story, but just bear with me for a second, because I feel like the millennials, Gen Zs, and these 2000 babies, people have lost their shit. The enhancement of pleasure is killing people at such an alarming rate, and it has become something that is genuinely hard to comprehend. No pun intended. I can get that, yes, maybe he was trying to have a little bit of fun here and there. But honestly, you're in your 20s. What the fuck do you need a blue pill for? A year ago, there was a string of cases attached to this entire thing. And all of these people were either ending up in the hospital in critical condition or dead. And I think it was only one out of the number of multiple cases last year, at around this same time if I'm not wrong, that had someone who was I think at the age of 60s and shit. The rest were people who are in late teens or 20s or some shit. And you're busy asking yourself, you've got a dick, it works. It does the job. Why the fuck would you need a blue pill? Yes, maybe you don't last that long. But hell, you can come ask me. I'll tell you for a fact, go jack off the first time. By the time you're going in for your second round, you last a hell of a lot longer than you did in your first. Not unless if it's a special case. But still, there's ways that you can prevent that shit from happening. But there's that enhanced pleasure shit that people are doing that's just taking people overboard. Because the guy that's doing alcohol is adding weed. The guy who's doing alcohol and weed is probably adding pills. The guy who's doing alcohol might probably add the pills and even skip the weed. And the person that's doing all 3 of them is probably adding cocaine as well. And you ask yourself, at what point does this shit end? Yes, I get it. You want to have fun. You want to feel amazing and shit. But at what point does this shit end? Maybe I'm the one who just hasn't experienced most of that shit. And maybe I need someone to tell me about it. But at what point does this shit end? Because now we've pushed it to sex and people are you know what? How about I try using a blue pill? For what? You're in your 20s. What the fuck do you need a blue pill for? And then this guy ends up overdosing on that shit. I'm even wondering how he ended up overdosing on that shit, assuming that he was the one who decided to, take them himself. Because if that was the case and other people were feeding him the blue pills, say, he was grounded and put in his, drink or some shit or in his food, then if they're serving him the blue pills, then why not fuck him after? Like, there's ways that, the blue pill is supposed to help out. But a nigga's having an erection for like a straight 2-3 days. Like, that shit is painful. Like, I think the longest time I've had an erection is like 3 hours. And that shit got painful after a while. Now, I'm trying to think about someone who's having an erection for like 3+ days. Damn. Like, please, I get it. Like, sex is good. And, like, sex maybe when you're high is even better. But honestly, just ask yourself if the enhancement is worth the shit that it can do to your body. Just ask yourself. Because this blue pill shit, I don't know. It might be something that's on your bucket list that you want to, take off, or, you're adding so that you take off at some point. But honestly, I don't think it's worth your life or worth the condition of your heart. So please, if you want to, you can. But honestly, there's no need to do it. Like, there's so many other things that you can do. Or, just have normal sex. Even the boring shit. That shit still feels good either way. But anyways, that aside, we should move it on. So on to our main topic of today. And I don't know how many of y'all listened to R&B or, listened to R&B back in the day, even in the 2010s. But there was this song that Jamie Foxx and Drake did called Fall For Your Type. It goes, I always fall for your type. And it's Jamie Foxx busy talking about how he's interested in a certain kind of beautiful woman, and the kind of problems that she comes with, he knows about them, but he still ends up falling for this babe and going through the same cycle over and over again. And it's a pretty interesting story because it actually speaks to a truth that happens with a lot of people's dating and sex lives and shit. Because you're finding that one person is dating this one kind of babe or is dating this one kind of guy, and it happens again. Even though they're changing the person, the behaviors are still the same. It's kind of the whole talk of, like, shorty is crying because she's been dating douchebags, consistently dates douchebags and shit. Like, that was some shit that I saw way back in the early 2010s, which actually did carry quite a lot of truth to it. Babes will complain about having a douchebag as a boyfriend, or why it is that they date douchebags or assholes, but they still end up dating them. And you sort of ask yourself why. And honestly, like, people think that this is something that's a little bit more trivial, but wait until you get to the toxic sides of it. Like, beyond just him being a dick, him being an asshole, him being a douchebag, like the toxic side of it that involves domestic violence. Because there's a case that I saw about a week ago on a woman who had survived a knife attack by her ex-lover, who ended up being stabbed to death by the new guy that she got, that she had supposedly started staying with, almost in a come we stay, he's my husband kind of fashion. Now, the story reads, and I quote, "A woman in Karigita, Naivasha has lost her life after her lover allegedly stabbed her to death in a domestic row. The Maclean Bonoreri was stabbed to death by her estranged 28-year-old lover after a wrangle that had escalated. The 26-year-old woman had left her home where she had been living with her lover in Narok to visit her sister in Nakuru. Brian Jomo, the name of her lover, allegedly followed her, hoping to mend things after Bonoreri's sister offered to help them resolve their differences. Jomo, however, lay in wait for a time when the deceased sister was not at her house, locked all of the exits, and stabbed the mother of three to death." End quote. And you're hearing a story like this, you're like, okay, so she was dating a guy who wanted to stab her, and she managed to survive. And then she ends up dating someone else who also ends up going for a knife attack and ends up stabbing her. And you're almost wondering if this is like a problem that's happening. Is it the choice of guys that she's with? Is it where she's trying to date from? Because some people might think that this is like an area thing, because there's been 3 women who've been killed around Naivasha, same area where she is, and all of that is domestic violence. And this is like fairly recent cases, over the past couple of days and weeks and shit. So maybe it's an area thing. maybe, but you still think about it and you're like, how is it that all of these guys from the same area are all having that same problem? Because I don't think all of these guys have been bewitched. I don't think it's something in the air. I don't think it's something in the food. I feel like it's probably an anger issue that is unresolved. It could be people that just don't know how to control their anger. And, they've kind of gotten to a point where they felt like, whatever it is that they did is warranted because of their anger. Stupid form of thinking. But when you still look at it, some cases where you find one person is dating this kind of woman, then the next woman they're with or the next man they're with, all of a sudden is still doing the same exact shit. You have to ask yourself if maybe you're attracted to the wrong kind of people. Like, regardless of your gender. Like, I'll even speak for the fellas, because I know guys will fall for this shit. Like, we always talk about this shit all the time as guys. You always talk about how it's the crazy chicks that are the finest. The fine babes are usually the crazy ones. And that shit is true to a certain extent. But are you telling me that you're going to, continue dealing with a crazy shorty just because she's fine? Like, I can get that, her looking fine uplifts your status in society and, gives a certain kind of validation and shit. But still, is it really worth it? Is it really something that you'd say is worth your peace? Is it something that's worth your life? Is it something that's worth your body? Because I have a homie, mad shout out to you, Brian, and you know yourself. Like, this guy was in a relationship for, I think, like a year and a half, and he was in a toxic relationship, and shorty was fine as hell. Like, mans was properly in love. But these guys used to get into fights, and shorty would get so physical to the point where this guy would get stabbed. And man's even showed me like scars, like where he'd been stabbed and shit. And eventually, even he had to get to a point where he was like, yo, if I stay in this relationship any longer, we are both going to kill ourselves. Or one of us is going to kill the other. And there's a pretty good chance that I'm the one who's going to be dead. And the guy had to step out. Because at some point, no matter how well you feel like, oh, I can change this person or shit can get better, some shit you have to go and see the red flag and avoid it at all costs. Like, what happened to learning from our mistakes? Like, you're getting into one relationship and you're treated a certain way, you're probably treated like shit, and then you end up getting dropped, or you end up dropping that person, you move on to another relationship, you end up going through the same shit again, and then you end up getting dropped, and you're busy saying, you know what, I'm tired of this guy, oh, I'm tired of guys, or I'm tired of babes, oh, no more, that's a proper red flag. And then you end up falling for the same shit again, and then it happens to you, and then you expect your homies to still be on your side. Like, even us as the homies, we get pissed off because you cannot be falling for the same old BS time and time again, because like, we're human beings. We're quite possibly the smartest species on the planet, as far as we know. And you're telling me that we can't learn from our past mistakes? Like, is the kind of love and affection and treatment that you get from that type of person so good that you're willing to risk it all again, hoping that he's going to be different or that she's going to be different? Like, I just need to know real quick, because honestly, we're getting to a stage where people are losing their lives for some of the pettiest shit. Like, people are hacking each other over 20 bob. 20 fucking bob. People are bashing each other in the head to death over a piece of ugali, over a piece of chapati. People are becoming more and more uncontrollable, and you're still feeling like it's something that's worth actually fighting for. Like, I know babes talk about red flags, and I'm usually, one of the people that opposes babes on a lot of things, but if you can clearly see that this guy is a red flag, if you can clearly see the same old behaviors that were being carried out by someone that you had in the past, what's so wrong with you stepping out? And yes, I get it. People are like, oh, people need to be taught how to be better, blah, 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 anger management, mental health, blah, blah, blah. Oh, people should stop harming each other, go tell that to the perpetrators and shit. And I get that. And yes, I feel like we do have quite a lot to do in that department. But at the same time, we also need to start with ourselves. Like, when you're going ahead to date a crazy bitch, and I'm gonna say it, crazy bitch, and you can clearly see that she's a problem, but you decide to stay with her because she is quite possibly one of the finest things that you've seen, or you're willing to make the relationship work. Like, just tell me for a little bit. Do you really think that if it happens the second, the third, the fourth time, that it's really going to change? Like, aren't you just tolerating more bullshit in your life? Like, especially for us as guys. Like, we hold the keys to the relationship and we have the ability to step out at any given point in time. But you're too busy listening to her BS of, if you leave, I'll kill myself. You're not going to leave me. You can do blah, 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 but you'll still come back. Like, homie, not unless if you've been chained to that house, I feel like it is very possible for you to leave. Hard, yes, but possible, yes. So, for once, in as much as we can talk about how we need to end gender-based violence, how we need to end domestic violence, how people should, start doing anger management, how people should, find better ways of addressing their issues and sorting out their issues, can we start with ourselves and make sure we know that if this person who abused me has done what they did and this next person is doing the same thing, there's a red flag. Can we just start by pointing out that, you know what, I can see problems of abuse coming and I'm going to leave that shit? Like, can we just start from there? Please. Because I know, yes, there's people that are gonna treat other people like shit. There's bad people in this world. And it's not like we can't avoid people with certain toxic behaviors in our, dating lives and shit. But even then, are you telling me that if it happened to you once, you're not able to detect and run away from that shit when it comes through a second time? Like, are you telling me that you are that averse to learning from the shit that happens to you? Or is it that we've reached the pinnacle of our society right now, so learning has actually become a bullshit thing? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the whole idea of avoiding domestic violence should start from a personal level. Avoid the problem before it becomes a major problem for you. And most times you can see that shit from a mile away. The only thing is we decide to stick around because for some reason it's like we're hoping that it doesn't happen to us, or that we'll probably know how to handle it, maybe because we have past experiences, or maybe you're the person that's their kryptonite. Like, can we actually just be real with ourselves for once and acknowledge that some shit just needs to be avoided from the get-go? And no matter what you say or think, shit that is packaged in good packaging is still shit inside. Like, can we accept that shit? For once, for the sake of our relationships, for the sake of our lives. Although, then again, maybe you're the type of person that sees the hope. Maybe you're one of the people that has had someone who's toxic and you've managed to transform them. I don't know. Maybe there's something that you did that worked that maybe I don't know. And maybe you might hold the keys to, handling toxic relationships that clearly I have never had access to, and maybe I might seek to learn from. But I want your thoughts on this. If you are one of the people that feels that way, if you are one of the people that feels the same way I feel, I want your thoughts and views on it as well. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at Breaktime on Westside. On Facebook, it is also at Breaktime on Westside. And on Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. And if you are listening through Castbox, feel free to drop your thoughts and comments below, and I will attend to them accordingly. And I will catch you guys on the next break.